With Listen Layer, placing a single script tag across your website allows you to automate and scale your conversion tracking. I'm going to show you how easy this is. Now, if you're new to Listen Layer and you've just set up your account, you'll need to make sure that you've properly defined your domain name and that you've placed the Listen Layer script on all of the pages of your website. Then you'll want to navigate to Listeners and search for some applications that you use online. In this case, we use Gravity Forms on our website, and we want to automate our form conversion tracking. So we're going to enable the Gravity Forms listener. Now we'll notice that Gravity Forms appears down here, but we have this notice that says we need to turn on some features. So we'll navigate to the feature screen and filter down to the activity features. Every listener has a series of activity features which push information into the data layer of the user's browser automatically when that action occurs. The data layer is just an object that exists in the user's browser that holds structured data. And a platform like Google Tag Manager can read the data layer and use information that is pushed into it in order to trigger tags and power your conversion tracking. And so here we have a listener feature called single step form submissions. And I'm going to turn that on, and I'm also going to turn on form loads. And so what we're going to expect now is every time a Gravity Form loads on a page, this event is going to be pushed into the data layer, along with a lot of details about that form itself. And then when the user submits the form, this event will be pushed into the data layer. Now, all of this will happen automatically. The listener will do all that work and push it into the data layer. And all we have to do is set up a simple rule in Google Tag Manager to target these events in order to automate our conversion tracking. Now, it's important to note under event settings here, we can see the full list of the events that this listener can push into the data layer. And we see the two that we just enabled are now active. And we're going to go ahead and publish our changes. So this is the change where we decided to turn on Gravity Forms. And now we do have a test website that this is running on. We're going to pull up that test website just to ensure that we are working with the latest version of everything. I'm going to do a hard refresh. And then I'm going to jump into Google Tag Manager and I'm going to preview my current workspace. I'm going to place the demo website URL there. Now, this is the Google Tag Manager account that has a container running on this website already. And once the debug view here is connected, I'm going to navigate to my Gravity Forms testing page. And then I'll take a look back here at my data layer activity in the debug view. And I'll notice that we have two events, GF form loaded and GF form loaded. The reason we have two of them is because there's two different forms, Gravity Forms, on this page. And back inside of Listen Layer, we enabled a feature called form loads. So every time a form loads on a page, this event is pushed into the data layer. Now, you can use this to track things like form impressions and views. I also just like to have it on so that I can more easily see what exists on any given page. For example, I can jump in here and I can look to see that this particular form has the form ID GF2. This one has the form GForm 4. And in our data layer, we have the event name, and then we have a section called automatic values. This is where data is automatically pushed into the data layer. This is data that the listener picks up just kind of on automatically. Whereas there is a section here for custom values. You can actually use some more advanced features inside of Listen Layer to write rules that push custom values directly into your data layer. But today we're simply looking at automating all of our form tracking so we can stop doing things like using thank you pages. So what we care about is when a user actually submits a form. So let's go ahead and we'll fill out a form. Just one of these test forms. So we get a thank you message, and we'll notice that we now have a new event called GF form submitted. So rather than firing tags based on thank you page views or button clicks, we now can fire conversion tags based on this actual form submission action that the listener identifies. This can improve the user experience on the website. It can improve the actual quality and accuracy of the data that we collect. It also allows us to fully scale our tracking, because all we have to do is target this one event, and no matter how many forms are placed on the site from Gravity Forms, they will always trigger the tags that we'll set up to fire on that event. And then lastly, once you have this implemented, unlike with thank you pages and button click tracking, we can write custom rules to really start to segment and enhance the data that we collect. So the next step to automating our conversion tracking for forms is to set up a trigger inside of Google Tag Manager that focuses on this event. So I'm actually going to copy the name of this event, and then I'm going to jump into Google Tag Manager. And I'm going to set up a conversion trigger that focuses on that Gravity Form submission event. So we're going to select to create a new trigger. And this is going to be a custom event trigger. And we're simply going to paste the name of the event that we want to target in the data layer into the event name. What this does is now we have an actual event inside of Google Tag Manager that's registered, that knows every time this data layer event happens, we can do something with that now. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to use a test tag that we've got set up for some other purposes. I like to have a test tag just so I can make sure that all of my triggers are working before I go ahead and set up conversion tracking. And I'm going to find the name of the event, GF form submitted, that I just created. I want this tag to fire when a form submits. So you could imagine this might be maybe a Facebook standard event tag, or a Google Ads conversion tag, or maybe a conversion event tag from LinkedIn. Or perhaps you just want to send an event directly to Google Analytics or GA4. Now, in this case, we just have a single test tag referencing this one trigger, but in the situations that I just explained, or that I just kind of ran through, you could set up a tag for all of those systems and point this to this one trigger. This trigger is a universal global trigger that fires no matter what when a Gravity form is submitted, and it'll send those conversions to the platforms. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to refresh our preview. Go back to Gravity Forms. We're going to make sure that we're fully connected to the debug window, and then we're going to submit this form. And what we should see now is that we have the test tag firing when a form is submitted. So with a single configuration, we've now automated our form tracking across the entire website. And we can prove that by looking at the second form, which is also a Gravity form. And we can fill that out. And what we'll see is that we'll have a second form submission event, and the same tag will fire. And so now once you have kind of your foundation set up, again, you can multiply the number of tags that you're using and track conversions across all of your marketing platforms. Now, this is a very simple example of just using a listener that automatically generates an event to power your conversion tracking at scale. Once you have these basics down, I would recommend digging into some of the more advanced features of Listen Layer that would allow you to actually customize the data layer and to start to segment and enhance your conversion tracking. Jump into a free Listen Later account today and start